Before we begin, if you believe that the hardest battles aren't fought in public, but inside the human heart, make sure you subscribe. This channel tells the stories people are too afraid to say out loud. Stories about love, regret, temptation, and the quiet decisions that change everything. If you've ever stood on the edge of a choice you knew could destroy your world, this story is for you. I never believed I was capable of betrayal. Not because I thought I was perfect, but because I believed I understood the cost. At 39, I had built a life that looked stable from the outside. A husband with a steady career. 2 children who still came to me when they were sick. A calendar filled with appointments, birthdays, grocery lists, dentist reminders, school emails. I was the spine of the household. The quiet organizer. The dependable one. My husband worked long hours. He always had. In the early years of our marriage, I wore his ambition like a badge of honor. I told myself his absence meant security. It meant college funds. It meant vacations we'd take someday. But over time, security replaced connection. We didn't fight. We didn't shout. We simply faded into politeness. We became roommates who shared responsibilities. At night, I would lie beside him, staring at the ceiling fan turning in slow, lazy circles. Sometimes I would reach for his hand in the dark. Most nights he shifted unconsciously away. And I told myself this was adulthood. This was what marriage eventually became. Predictable. Safe. Quiet. I swallowed my loneliness because that's what responsible women do. Until he arrived. He was 26. A friend's son who needed temporary work while figuring out his next steps. He came to help renovate the garage. He was respectful. Quiet. Reliable. At first, he barely registered in my world. My days were too full. Too structured. But slowly something changed. It wasn't dramatic. It was subtle. He asked how my day was, and waited for an answer. He noticed when I looked tired. He carried heavy boxes without being asked. Fixed small things that had been broken for months. He paid attention to details my husband no longer saw. The first time our eyes held for a second too long, I dismissed it. The second time I felt it. The third time I knew. It wasn't about him being younger. It wasn't about excitement. It was about being seen. And I hadn't realized how invisible I'd felt until someone looked at me like I mattered again. Temptation rarely arrives loudly. It creeps in through ordinary afternoons. A hand brushing accidentally in a narrow hallway. Standing a little too close while passing a tool. Conversations that linger longer than necessary. One evening, I found him in the garage sorting through boxes. My husband had fallen asleep in front of the television. The house was dim. Quiet. I don't remember what I meant to say when I stepped into the doorway. I only remember how still the air felt between us. "You don't have to watch me work," he said gently. "I'm not," I lied. He studied me in a way that made my pulse quicken. "You always look like you're holding your breath," he said. And something in me cracked. Because he was right. I had been holding my breath for years. Holding in disappointment. Holding in loneliness. Holding in the version of myself I used to be. I should have left the room. Instead I stayed. That was the first real mistake. It was raining the afternoon. Everything crossed from tension into action. The sky was heavy gray, pressing down on the house like it knew what was about to happen. I was in the kitchen. Alone. Or at least I thought I was. The back door opened softly. My heart reacted before my mind did. "I told you to stay away," I said without turning. "I tried," he replied. There are moments in life where you feel 2 futures pulling at you simultaneously. One safe. Predictable. Controlled. The other reckless. Alive. Dangerous. He stepped closer. "Tell me to leave," he said quietly. And I couldn't. Not because I didn't understand the consequences, but because in that moment I felt awake for the first time in years. We didn't speak about love. We didn't speak about the future. We spoke through silence and proximity, and a mutual understanding that we were crossing something sacred. When it ended, reality rushed back in. The house. The rain. The weight of what we'd done. He left. I stood in the kitchen long after the door closed, gripping the counter like the floor might disappear beneath me. I had not just betrayed my husband. I had betrayed the version of myself I believed in. Guilt is a strange thing. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. I made dinner that night. I smiled at the right moments. I handed my husband the salt with steady hands. But inside everything had shifted. He began texting, leaving small notes, words about not being able to stop thinking about me. I tore them up, but not before reading them twice. Every knock at the door made my heart race. Every buzz of my phone sent panic through my veins. I tried to bury it beneath routine, cleaned the house twice, reorganized cabinets, scrubbed tile grout until my fingers ached. But longing doesn't disappear because you mop the floor. It waits. My husband began watching me differently. Not accusing, just observing. Suspicion doesn't always look like rage. Sometimes it looks like silence. Then my daughter found one of the notes in the trash. "Who wrote this?" she asked. Her voice was innocent, but my pulse thundered in my ears. "It's nothing," I said too quickly. Children feel tension like changes in weather. She didn't press, but I saw doubt in her eyes, and that hurt more than anything. Days passed. He stopped coming. The house felt emptier without him, and I hated myself for noticing. A week later, I heard his voice near the front door. He was speaking to my husband. My breath caught in my chest. I stepped into the hallway just as my husband handed him a check. "Don't come around anymore," my husband said calmly. Polite, controlled, final. Our eyes met for only a second, and in that second I saw regret. Not just his. Mine. People think temptation is about desire. It isn't. It's about hunger. Hunger to feel wanted. Hunger to feel alive. Hunger to feel visible. I could blame loneliness. I could blame routine. I could blame neglect. But the truth is simpler. I made a choice. And choices carry weight. The affair didn't explode dramatically. There was no screaming confrontation. No shattered glass. Just a shift. My husband became more distant. More guarded. My daughter watched me more closely. And I watched myself in the mirror, wondering when I had become someone capable of risking everything. I don't know if my husband ever found proof, but he sensed something. Trust once cracked doesn't make noise. It just changes shape. We still live in the same house. We still share meals. But something invisible sits between us now. And sometimes late at night, when the house is silent, I ask myself a question I never imagined I would. Was the moment of feeling alive worth the slow erosion of everything stable? Temptation gave me intensity, but consequences gave me clarity. I learned that loneliness inside marriage is dangerous if left unspoken. I learned that silence builds walls higher than arguments ever could. And I learned that crossing a line doesn't just change the relationship you betray. It changes you. If you've ever felt invisible in your own life, if you've ever stood too close to something you knew could burn you, ask yourself this. Are you chasing another person? Or are you chasing the version of yourself you've lost? Because sometimes the real solution isn't stepping outside your marriage. It's confronting the silence inside it. If this story made you think, subscribe. Because the hardest truths are the ones we live quietly. And sometimes hearing them out loud is